Professor Koth to give his view on today's topic.
Thank you very much, comrade. Although I don't know much about the November 18 shootings, but attacks like what happened in November 18 shooting sometimes can backfire. You see, it can backfire against the regime. It can become counterproductive for the attackers. And in fact, it can become so disastrous for the attackers that they wish they had never done anything. Like, for example, we have some examples. For example, in 1991, that is, I think it was in USA. Los Angeles police beat a motorist named, I think the name was Rodney King, who had been speeding to avoid arrest. And after a video of the beating was broadcast on television, viewers were outraged and public support for the police dropped. The beating backfired on the police. Then there is another one. I think it was in 1990. McDonald's sued two anarchists, that is Helen Steele and David Morris, over their leaflet. What's wrong with McDonald's? That was the question there. The legal action was widely seen as unfair and led to a huge campaign in support of Steele Morris. It was a sort of a public relation disaster for McDonald's. Suing Steele and Morris backfired on McDonald's. As you know, the McDonald's is the one that makes this about restaurants that you know around the world that's leading. Then there's another one in 2004. Media reported on torture of Iraqi prisoners in Abu Ghraib prison. The graphic photos showed U.S. prison guards grinning as they humiliated and tortured the prisoners. And then publication of the photos severely damaged the reputation of the U.S. government, especially in the Middle East. The torture backfired on the U.S. military. Then I can remember another one again, I think it was in 1991. Thousands of people joined funeral procession in Delhi, that is in East Timor, using the occasion to peacefully protest against the Indonesian occupation. As the procession entered the place, a cemetery called Santa Cruz, then Indonesian troops suddenly opened fire and then killed hundreds of people. Then Western journalists were present and recorded the massacre. Their testimony and the liberation movement laid the basis for independence a decade later. The massacre of protesters backfired on the Indonesian government. So backfire can be immensely valuable in aiding efforts against injustice. The trouble is most backfires do not backfire. Most police beatings receive little or no publicity. Most legal actions for defamation are hardly known, and most torture is done in secret. Even massacres, which are harder to hide, may generate comparatively little concern. And with this one, I encourage, as most of us are activists, I encourage, to being an activist, we must do a lot of readings and understand what is happening around the world and do some comparison. So I'd like to encourage most of us to read a book, to read a backfire manual, that is a tactical against injustice by Brian Martin. This is a practical handbook and a model for activists to be more effective when facing injustice and powerful, dangerous opponents. The backfire model is a framework for understanding tactics used by perpetrators of injustice and how to oppose them. Like the one I've said about 1991 protesters in Delhi, East Timor, were massacred by Indonesian troops. This turned out to be a political disaster for the Indonesian government, greatly increasing international support for the East Timor's independence struggle. The massacre backfired with the Indonesian government. And that's also why that book, The Backfire Manual, explains why. So imagine you are planning an action and think you might come under attack. Maybe it's a rally and there's a risk of police brutality. Maybe you're exposing government corruption and there could be reprisal against your group. To be prepared, you need to understand you need to understand the tactics likely to be used by your opponent. For example, a cover up the action and trying to discredit you and your group. So the book goes further and the backfire manual provides guidance for this sort of planning. It outlines the backfire model and gives example and exercise for using it. This is a practical handbook for being more effective whenever you face powerful, dangerous opponents. So uh, the backfire model is a way of analyzing attacks. It highlights actions by each side to reduce or increase outrage from perceived injustice. The model is not intended to tell people what to do. Activists know a lot about the local situation and are in the best position to make a judgment about options. So the model is a general tool that points to the sort of things that are likely to happen or that could happen. It can help activists to choose more wisely. So the backfire model, like any model, is a tool. And this tool, I think, this tool, we have been trying to use it in Kenya and it seems it has been working. Like, for example, Tamali has been in Kenya and he knows the story of that lady from Dandora. Uh, do you remember when you came here, Dandora, there was a lady who was the government, I think the government that killed her, or maybe they're saying that she did an abortion. You see, there's a way that we did an outrage, we did a national outcry, and that action really backfired on the government side. So the backfire model, like any model, is a tool. Is a tool. It doesn't guarantee success. Uh, Imagine an army that has the best possible strategy. That's helpful, but if the army has a few troops, is poorly trained, and has outdated weapons, it's unlikely to succeed even with brilliant strategy. And likewise, the backfire model can help activists develop better strategies, but this isn't a guarantee for success. It's simply one element in a let's say in a much wider process. So when an oppressor does something unjust, he or she can take action to reduce popular outrage, and it's likely to use one or more of these techniques to reduce outrage. Like, for example, maybe myself, it's for the first time that I heard about about November 18 shootings. This is my first time hearing it. Maybe because there was no enough outrage or outcry. But I can remember there was a certain outcry and outrage that was done. I think it's 2018. I think it's in West Nile. I think it's West Nile when Bobby Wine went to. There was a by-election in West Nile, and I think it was 12 people who were killed. But because they did a lot of, there was a national outcry and there was outrage. Many people around the world, even here in Kenya, we did some demonstration to condemn the killings that was done. I think it is a constituency in the West Nile. I don't remember the name of the constituency. Some 12 people were killed, but Bobby Wine was success. I think the driver of Bobby Wine was killed, and other 12 people. So I think we have to create some outrage when there is some injustices, and there's a way that that the system or the rogue government or the oppressor does so that this outrage cannot come out. Because, for example, the November 18 killings here in Kenya, because here Kenya was so active, but we didn't know about it so much about it, but we knew about what happened in West Nile with Bobby Wine. So it's because people didn't know about the November 18 killings because government used about 5 methods of reducing the outrage. One is cover up of the action, that is hiding the attacks, That is like a censorship, censorship, and putting the media below the radar. That is one. That is cover up and cover up of the action. The second one is devaluation of the target. Uh, labeling. Like for example, they can say um, uh, 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 those people who were killed in November 18 killings were, they were thugs, they were terrorists, So they use such kind of things, yeah, that's what they do. That's the devaluation of the target. They make a, when you want to kill a dog, you just give a dog a bad name, and people will buy that idea. The third one is reinterpretation. You know, the government has powers to lie about, or even minimizing the consequences. Because, for example, what happened in November 2018, maybe because the government minimized the consequences that happened in November 2018, so many people didn't know about what happened. Or they can do also passing the blame. Maybe so many students were killed or were arrested, so they're passing the blame and say the students did this. They like to always to pass the blame, or even framing, like the way we have put it today in today's topic about devaluating, devaluating and framing. So the government is so good in that. Then the fourth one is, they like, um, that we use, official channels used to give you know, to make it as if, when you're using official channels to put out our grievances, it devalues the justice that have been done. Then the fifth one, that the rogue governments or the press that uses is intimidation and rewards. They threaten those people who are those in the meetings, or people who are in the campaigns, or on the rally, eh, attack, eh, or even the last one is about incentives for, you know, you can be with the people in one struggle, but government can, take some people, and give them incentives, and they can talk different other things. So so these are the things that we need to understand about how government operates, so that things cannot be cannot other people from other areas cannot understand and know what is going on. So that's the way they reduce the outrage, the outrage that actually goes on. Like, you can remember that I've remembered the name of that Kenyan lady. She was called Catherine Mwatha. Catherine Mwatha. She was an activist, and there's a different version of how she died, but most of activists say that, but through outrage, that death could just have gone like that, and people never go. But through outrage, even attracted international media, it attracted even attracted foreign mission. So the other one is, I can remember, is that another 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 one is in 1960. There were protesting across South Africa against the racist personals, So, and I can remember, I've been reading some books that in Sharperville, mass police opened fire on peaceful protesters, killing perhaps 100 people. The police and government tried to reduce outrage in that Sharperville massacre. But even so, the massacre severely damaged the South African government international reputation. That's what, because everybody knows about the Sharperville massacre. Anyone can talk on about it and knows about it, and that's the reason why sometimes an injustice or oppression can easily backfire if we are well trained, if we are skilled on the issue of civil resistance. So activists, uh, uh, what I can say that also activists, what are the basic tactics that is available for us to use and to create outrage, make oppression backfire in terms of oppression and injustices. There are some keys to backfire, and that is one is to reveal. Like for example, the two in future when there is a lot of injustice and oppression, one, we need to reveal, expose the injustices, and we challenge the cover up, because what the system are doing it, they like to cover things, but we need to expose those injustices and challenge those cover up. Second is to redeem. Redeem, that is validate the target, to challenge the devaluation. Like they always say that the government devaluated and framed the 18th of November massacre. So we need to validate the target, and challenge the evaluation. Third is to reframe, that is to emphasize the injustices, counter reinterpretation. Fourth is redirect, mobilize, support, be wary of official channels. And five, resist, stand up to intimidation and bribery. So I think that is those 5 R's are can be used for backfire. Sometimes there's what to call a paradox of civil resistance. When it backfires, that the way it happened with the Sharpeville massacre, or what happened in West Nile, it means that's what we call paradox of civil resistance. It backfired with the government. So when supporters of Bobby Wine were killed, it created outrage nationally, it created outrage internationally. So that's the way it's supposed to be. So we need to always use those models on our day-to-day activism. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Comrade Julius, for the great knowledge about how the oppressor or how the current regime has continuously covered up injustices. In this case, we are specializing on the 18th November 2020 towards elections. It was still about the arrest of the new presidential aspirant, Bobby Wine. That's when people went to the streets to demonstrate, but it turned out violent. So it is so actually it's to my surprise that people of Kenya didn't hear so much about it. Um, of course, that is evidence that the oppressor was successful in covering up and devaluing the injustice. Yet everyone saw it that it was security agencies and police that were involved in such acts. I would like to welcome other members who have joined us. Comrade Cynthia, you're welcome. Comrade the African Revolution, you're also welcome. Comrade Sekanja Komasudi, you're welcome. Let me go straight to the next speaker, Comrade Mayanja. You can unmute and give your view according to the topic. Thank you.
Well, good evening once again. I would like to thank Mr. Julius for such a wonderful recital of what transpired. What is really notable is that the incident of Arua by-election attracted a lot of media attention and the international and local coverage, unlike that of November. And yes, I hear you loudest when you say that oppressive regimes like the one we have in Uganda, sometimes they are smart. They had the intention to use violence by killing people, especially young people, to stop a political upheaval which had been created by the National Inter-Platform and the People Power Movement. But what I observed, because I happened to be in Kampala, is that they played out a stint of someone attacking a police officer. I don't know whether you people saw that. When you look at the video, the video shows a young man, probably dressed in people power clothes, attacking a perceived police officer. That incident is what came out properly. The government spokesperson, our media, they focused on that. They didn't focus about the girl who was killed in Nakawa and others that were shot around. Come to think about other incidents, especially during the Kaihura time, where government gave us a false story to follow and hid tactfully what actually would be a story that would carry the day. But for me, I have reservations as far as using the ideas that Mr. Julius has talked about. You see, if you look at the Ugandan story critically well, it's like the population, the people, the social justice activists have been stripped of everything that they would use to fight back. For instance, if we are to look at what would carry our story in trying to report to the broader society about these violences, about these injustices, look at our media critically well. Would they be interested in writing about how this police officer or UPDF officer would went out of the way and then did this atrocious activity? My answer is no, because these media houses are hosted there. They are controlled by the military, by the police, by the regime. I'm always at pain to compare the Ugandan experience with Kenya, and my conclusion has been that maybe in Kenya there is some bit of something which is still in place that the people of Kenya can use to fight back. But in Uganda, I'm afraid it's not the story. If such is the case in Kampala here, in the city center, what about in the countryside? How reports about the atrocities in the far western Bunyoro sub-region in Kalamoja? So our story is a little bit complicated, but maybe for me, what I think, I have heard of the word the moral ground as a value in organizing for a fight back. I think what we need to do is to purify our organization in order to minimize such risks, because it is pointless for me to go back and cause for an accountability when a brother has been slain, when someone has died. So for me, I think as activists, our focus must be on how do we purify our organization to minimize on the risks. We have lost very many people. And coming to think about explicit nonviolent organization, I would want to conclude that it would save many. Would save many. So for me, I think going forward, we need, before we engage into any kind of activity, because now we know the people we are dealing with. We are dealing with bloodthirsty horns who came by killing people, by maiming people, by raping women, by causing destruction. And they have left for us those marks. If you have gone to Luwero, the skulls of 1986, which begins the story of the regime, are still there. Just to remind us that you mess with us, we are going to kill more. So now we know that we are dealing with people whose passion is into bloodshed. I think it calls upon all of us to organize explicitly well in order to minimize risks. For me, I felt a little bit sad when the drivers of the People Power movement took for granted warnings by actors who were in place. We ended up reciting what happened in 2011, in 2006, and very many other incidents in the past. So for me, going forward, I think it is time we sober down and we listen to messages of organization. Slowly by slowly, when we organize, when we build back the confidence of the public in order to act together, that is how we can mitigate this. But short of that, We don't have anything to use. When you go to court, for instance, I once upon a time challenged friends in the National Inter platform that why don't we sue of all these victims who were slain? Why don't we sue? But the question that I was asked is that in whose courts are we going to sue? So if the media cannot write about this story, if they can't make them their story, if courts cannot receive petitions against such violent acts by the military against the citizens, even when church cannot use pulpits to isolate the harbingers of these atrocities, then I don't see what is left to the side of citizens apart from strict organization and timing our operations. I want to first of all pause it at that for now.
Comrade Mayanja had submitted, and I would like to welcome the next speaker, Comrade Tamali. You're welcome. Oh.
Our topic, analyzing the oppressors' misinterpretation of 18th November shootings. On 18th November, to begin with, I happened to be someone who was caught up on the streets of Kampala. And I think, I don't know whether I was just unlucky or lucky to witness some of those shootings with my own eyes, because I was tied in the scene, at the scene for over 5 hours. So it was enough for me to see whatever happened. So today, when we analyze the oppressor's misinterpretation, from my side, I want to look at it on this perspective, what the oppressor didn't anticipate, or what the oppressor did not expect from the November shootings. And it is something that most of us have witnessed it, even if maybe we have not noticed that it was because of the November shootings that took place. First, because most of all other comrades have talked about the other things, but I want to always put it in the context of what we experience, or in the Ugandan context. That's where I always base my arguments in everything, the Ugandan context of what happened. And I would want to say that, first of all, that November shootings happened before the elections of 2021. We all know that. And it was prompted because of the campaigns that was ushering us to the 2021 elections, because it was triggered, the incident, the riot was triggered by an incident that happened in Luka district, which is, I think, in central Uganda. And to the regime, I think they were trying to give an explanation of trying to control the spread of COVID, because we all know the COVID rules that were put in place from 2020 when COVID broke out, that candidates are not supposed to host more than 200, I don't know whether it was 200 people to address. But then what happened, what we all witnessed, was some others were of course addressing millions, hundreds and hundreds, and yet the rule was 200 is the maximum. So what happened in Luka was something that police PR later explained that they were trying to control the spread of COVID. So the reason why they had to arrest one of the presidential candidates, Chagulaji Robert. The 18th November shooting, what the oppressor didn't know, or probably they may not even still be knowing, is that that shooting mobilized Ugandans on the need for change. That's something that I want to start with. This is really not what I believe even those ones who triggered the whole scene in Luka expected. They anticipated the usual arrest, and then people make noise online, and then people go to sleep, and then tomorrow life goes on. But what we witnessed on that fateful day is that mobilized Ugandans on the need for change. Why am I saying this? We've had several calls for revolution. We've had several calls for demonstrations. We've had several calls to Ugandans to rise up. But whatever happened on that fateful day, actually, I don't think there was someone or there was any media that was mobilizing people. Yes, the media could have contributed certain things, but then I was seeing just hungry Ugandans that had piled up. They had piled up and they were waiting for something to just trigger them, and so they had to just get out of where they were out of their comfort zone and just join these. Um, we saw this not happen. Remember, the incident happened in Luka, but we saw Kampala being mobilized. We saw other districts like Mukono being mobilized. We saw Lira being mobilized. We saw like different towns getting mobilized in no time. We were already hearing something has sparked somewhere. Something is also happening in this place. Something is also happening here and there. And this, I say that it mobilized the masses to the need for change. And we all know that we were headed for the 2021 February elections, presidential elections. And this takes me to the second point. I want to be as brief as possible. The second point that I saw what the November shootings did, it depopularized the regime. We never witnessed before Museveni struggle to rig elections. Of course, he never wins. But from that incident, we saw the young people. Personally, I think I saw the young people wake up, because initially they had given up, because Ugandans, we've waited for too long kind of to see a new regime put in place, to see a new president. And most people that we've always talked to will tell you, these elections, that does not bring change. This election, that does not bring change. Because we know the winner. We already know who is going to reach. So people were beginning to give up already. But what happened in November 18th, so people wake up, those ones who even never wanted to be anywhere part of the elections. I saw even people in the village bother about elections for the first time, because I happened to be, during that time I was traveling around Uganda, and I saw everybody wake up and begin to at least want to participate in the elections. And participating in the elections was voting out the regime, because whatever was happening during that time was something that you could see a typical injustice, because how could the laws be as biased as that? That all presidential candidates are supposed to speak to not more than 200, and then we are seeing the chopper going to land in the middle of 1 million people. We are going to see the chopper going to land in a primary school that has like 500 people. So this is something that we saw, like the November shootings led to depopularize the regime, the NRM regime, because it is that previous election that saw them actually sweat profusely to rig the elections, because they had also never experienced a Uganda that people had kind of woken up to that extent. For the first time, if some of you noticed, we saw Museveni campaign in some places, even twice, especially in the major towns. He used to move once, but in the major towns this time he had to make a return journey to come and again wake up people and say that, okay, you see, we have to go and vote. It's something that was not very usual, but they were depopularized from that whole scene. It is something that it's just unfortunate that our Kenyan comrades didn't get to know about it. But the November shootings was covered actually even by international media. It's something that was covered by international media because we saw over 55 lives lost. That is what was reported. But what about the ones that were not reported? It is something that triggered even more anger in people, even people who didn't want to be part of anything to do with regime change. This time wake up. People could have not succeeded, but the shooting caused depopularized the NRM regime, because even the people in the village that they used to ride on them as their supporters, this time round woke up to the need for change. It was just unfortunate that still we were rid of, but the hearts of the people, the mindset of the people had to change from that specific incident. Then something that I would, for now, say is the last thing that I witnessed. It has always happened that most of our institutions of government have been exposed because of a lot of irregularities, a lot of incompetences that happens in those institutions. But the November shootings exposed those institutions, especially the security, the police, the ruthless shooting, the tear gas that rocked Kampala and other major towns exposed them in the face of international media. It exposed them in the media because some of those places had even live coverages. Some of those places, some of us witnessed actually a direct shooting of someone because we were on the street. And this is something that the media didn't leave out. It actually exposed them to an extent where some of them were covered live. Most of us saw it on the media, though at some point I think all those videos had to be pulled off. How the regime of how dictatorship works, of course we all know it. Those things, most of them cannot now be traced because people were compromised to pull down those. But with the international media, I believe that if someone goes and tries to get them, I think you can still get them on their website. But that shooting exposed the weaknesses in our institutions, including the courts, because many families try to seek redress from court. But if any one of us here can tell me a case that was won against police or against the state over the killings, especially those ones who lost their loved ones in that shooting, if there is someone who knows of a case that court ruled in favor of the victims, then should clear it. But for me, what I know is it exposed the weaknesses, because even when the international media, even when the international bodies were questioning and condemning, the state did not come out to condemn their own institution, because they know it was under their instruction. And so I can say that it exposed the weaknesses. People could have not known before, or people could have underrated what was happening in Uganda before. But even when 55 lives were lost, we didn't see the state get concerned about it. All we had to hear was the people from the police PR, the people that were shot were hooligans. They were hooligans who were trying to loot people's shops and all that. And yet we all witnessed some of these scenes, either physically or through the media, that you can literally see that this is not someone who was, because when they're firing stray bullets, there are people who have been just caught walking. There are children who are coming back to school because the scenes happened in the evening. And the bullets were just stray, and the tear gas choked very many people. Very many people got admitted in the hospital because of that. And all this was caused by, uh, I can say, the ruthlessness or unprofessionalism in handling cases, such scenarios by police. And then the courts went mute about it. All the cases that were filed in court against the killing, the extrajudicial killings and the merciless shootings by police, no case has proceeded. And if so, I believe even the people who have filed those cases have probably given up, because years down the road, the court keeps on adjourning their cases, and maybe they say justice delayed is justice denied. By now, I don't want to even believe that there is something more to expect from what happened on that day through the institutions that are supposed to to serve the people of Uganda. I think briefly that's what I can say, that about the November shooting, what the state didn't know, what they misinterpreted, because to them, the shooting was meant to scare away the people. The shooting was meant to cause fear and panic in the hearts of the people. But some of us who witnessed the scenes, the more the shooting went on, the tear gas went on, the more people that were coming on the road to riot, the more people that were coming to join. Initially, I've said that I was on the street that day. We first parked somewhere thinking that, okay, the situation will come shortly, and then probably we can take off and go wherever we could proceed. But we witnessed more and more roadblocks being mounted on the road, and more people even coming to join, to an extent that we couldn't now move. That's where I'm saying that it made even more people, it angered more people, because you are seeing a resident the streets there was doing business around there, and the stray bullets has caught him. And it kept on triggering more anger in people to join. And just like I said, this is not what the regime anticipated. In their minds, as usual, the shootings was meant to create fear. Yes, I know the incident itself on that fateful day did not even create fear. Probably the fear, if it came later. But even that fear was translated in the ballot. We honestly know that whatever happened that day worked in the favor of the change seekers, even when we didn't succeed, but it worked in the favor of change seekers, that we had to see people who were less bothered about joining the struggle now come to join the struggle, because we know what shooting and killing does in the hearts of people. Because that person who has been shot dead, that person has a mother, has a father, has brothers and sisters, has friends. And the trigger in their hearts, the anger in their hearts would move them to demand or contribute to the need for change, to the call for change of government. And we can, it also translated, I can say, in the central region. I think the central region then had to vote overwhelmingly opposition, that the regime was completely denied votes in the central region. Even what they tried to rig could not even hand them anything to celebrate, and yet they rigged. Meaning, if it was a free and fair elections, then the regime would be shown an exit completely in the central region. That is what I saw, because it is central region actually that these shootings took place. It is they that actually saw the scenes of the November shootings physically, and some of them felt it directly because their relatives were victims of this shooting. I think for now, let me first stop there, and I give time to other comrades to contribute.
Yeah, thank you so much, Comrade Tamali. What the most interesting part you highlighted was about people being triggered. Yes, we all observed, sorry, people were triggered, and that outrage caused mass mobilization at first. But then, within a few days, people were nowhere to be seen. Within a month, people were quiet. Yet, there were very, very many lives. Some media reports were like over 55 people were killed, others over 100, others a different number. So I don't know what to call that. And we didn't, no one actually has the exact number. And we realize actually on ground, very many people died on that very day. And what Tamali talked about directly connects to what Comrade Julius talked about. Comrade Julius highlighted about five tools that the oppressor uses to reduce that anger, to reduce that outrage amongst the population. And he talked about different points like devaluation, defaming, media wash, where Comrade Mayanja talked about different media stations. They were not able to write about those stories. And on November 29th, the same month, the president came out and said those people were rioters, those people were hooligans, something like that. But then when you go back to people who are on ground, Comrade Tamali is here, can witness. When you go to that video, the documentary that was recorded and broadcasted by BBC, we have a lady who was working in a restaurant. She was not part of any riot. We could clearly see that. She was delivering food maybe to a customer, and she was shot. We've seen very, very many cases on that very day. Um, who you clearly see that they were not part of the riots, but the state came out and said those were rioters, burning tires, they were beating people. And this clearly informs us about the devaluation and the framing and all those tactics the regime has used to cover up those injustices and also reducing the outrage of the people. And that's where you find they've compromised some of the people. Comrade Mayanja actually talked about a young man who was attacking a policeman. Up to now, we've never seen that gentleman brought to courts of law. He's never persecuted. And on my mind, should we say that that person was taken to prison or what? Because he was doing something wrong, and we expect the person to be brought to book. But then we don't know. can we say that that was a violent flank? I think Comrade Julius will highlight more about it. During those demonstrations, because the masses are always non-violent, but we usually have those violent flanks, we usually have those agent provocateurs. I think Comrade Julius is going to highlight more about that, and also other speakers. Right now, let me welcome Comrade Awadi to give his point of view, and then we come to the round of questions. Thank you so much. You're welcome, Comrade Awadi.
Thank you, co-host Madam Claire, speakers and listeners out there. Yeah, there is one constant in all this that is happening. Let's go to the genesis of the misinterpretation of similar events like the 18th November shootings that have happened previously. The dates back maybe in the 70s. In 1971, when Amin took power, there's one man who even didn't stay around. He just decided to move into guerrilla warfare simply because he believed that he can't be under Amin's government. And what did that mean? That for him, he can always use any means to do away with anything for him to exist. What use? He will use violence. So we don't have really to say that whatever we saw on 18th November was a new happening. It is something that has been brewing from as early as we had the independence, and we were very much unlucky that the most integral person who is the king of using uh, violence as a tool of oppression has survived all that time to date. But every time he does his violence, people think that this is a new. It is a new beginning of that kind of violence. But that violence way back. We go back to 1972 when we wanted to come back to Uganda to chase him from government. There's one for him, whether you like it or not, he used violence to pursue his agenda or interest. It happened that he forced the people to come and attack Amin in 19.
I think we lost Comrade Awadi. We can have Comrade the African Revolution. He has the mic. He can unmute and briefly give his point of view.
Yes, yes, I was saying, in 1979, when Amin was still strong and he still had no, in 1972, yes, when Amin still had the support of the population behind him, he risked the life of liberators simply because he believed so much in using violence. He convinced the people to attack Amin, and what happened was a lot of deaths that occurred in Mbarara. So you see the type of person we have in our country now as the of government, the mentality he has, the way he behaves with when he's in power and outside power, and normally the way someone behaves outside power, in most cases, that's how he behaves when he's in power. Then you come to 1980, after losing an election, instead of going to the courts, and another thing, he never believes in the law. He always believes that he is the law himself. He didn't bother going to court. He took some young guys and some few guns, and he decided to use again violence. You see, when he wants power, he uses violence. When he's losing power, he feels he is threatened by losing power. He also uses violence. So violence is a tool. It is a permanent tool that he uses to acquire or when he's threatened to lose power. So now we come in 2000, when they succeeded in the struggle, NRM struggle. They take power. In 1996, when Semogere stood against him, that was the time when we are saying that Uganda is trying to build its democracy again. Semogere stood as a presidential candidate. There was no reason, no need to met violence on Semogere of the DP, but there was a lot of violence against Semogere then. You get it? And there's one problem with that man I'm talking about. For him, if he panics, and he normally panics when he feels he's going to lose power. And when he panics, he uses violence. And the violence is always used through formal institutions and informal institutions. Formal institutions he uses are the military, the police, the intelligence, and those secret police like the Kalanga action plan, which was led by Kakoza Mutale. I understand some information came this evening that he was also being raided at his farm somewhere in Ruero, because now he has fallen on the wrong side of the man I'm talking about. You see, which means it is always him. And there's nothing like the institutions that it is the military, what. It is only one person who is the beneficiary and the orchestrator of all those, violence to continue oppressing people. And it is because that's the way he benefits. What is his benefit? Is keeping power perennial. Let's go to 2001. Did you know that about 156 people died in 2001 when Dr. Besigye was stood for presidency? But that one was not talked about. I vividly remember there's one person called Baronda in Rukungiri was shot by the presidential guards. By then it wasn't SFC, it was Presidential Guard Brigade. You get it? That's the presidency protection unit. So they killed that man. He was dressed for the occasion because that was the last rally of Dr. Kizza Besigye. So the man was shot. Oh, now again in 2006, 2006, 2005, 2006, when he was returning from South Africa to come and stand as a presidential candidate now for FDC party. There was a lot of violence as he entered the city. From Chengera, so many people, about 50 or so, were killed. You see, so this is the same. I'm trying to show you really a chronology of events that shows that this violence, as long as the person who is the orchestrator or the beneficiary is still with us, we shall still see more of it. 2011, it tried to subsidize, but again, I think 2011, he was a bit sure that everything is going to go his way. Then come again 2016. I was very active myself in the campaigns of 2016. I was a campaign agent in the Kampala Central, that is the Kampala Central constituency. I think one of the last rallies turned to be violent. A lot of people were shot, others were killed. Kizza Besigye was trying to access the city to do the things right in the middle of the city, because it was a constituency, so it was blocked from the railway side. Tear gas, then went back and tried to make another attempt, which became very, very difficult. There were shootings, there were arrests, and all that, and the whole city became like chaotic. Then we come to 2020. That is where our topic of discussion is. So you find that these things have been going on, and it is still going on. People will always come out and try to, to agitate or maybe to cause change, but because now the master of this, the oppressor being the master of all these situations, and he has been using the same system since, he knows that people will protest, but they will have limitation, and where he stop is where he begins from. And whenever where people stop and he begins from there, all those people who were behind the protests are neutralized. You see, others are bought off, others are put to jail, others are forced into exile, and others just give up. I can give an example of a lady I know, Winnie Babihuga, was very strong. And Mugisha, where they just decided to disappear quietly. You see, so there is a sequence of these things happening. My comrade Mayanja hinted of how really we have to come together and see how really we handle such a situation, because it has been with us for quite a long time. We can't make headway because we are dealing with a violent person and he's armed. You see, he does not respect the rule of law, and he's not bound by any law. The law is onto him. So we really have to, as organizers and activists, we need to find a way to really deal with this situation. But we can't really do the same things time and again and expect different results. And another thing we need to really take into consideration, we don't have to highlight just one event like the 18th November shootings. We should bring them all together the way those South African struggles used to do. They would bring the violations from the time when Mandela started the struggle and put it together, so that whoever is, even the young generation, when they are getting, they are coming on board to participate or to make a contribution in the struggle, they'll always know where the struggle came from. But now when we talk about 18th November and we don't talk about the Samogrer's experience, we don't talk about the Kizza Besigye 2001 experience where 156 people died. We have got the raid at the courts. You get it, the Black Mambas. We've got the beatings of the MPs. In all these things, we need to really have a way we bring them together and we put them out there to the people to really appreciate that we are dealing with a long time entrenched oppressor who has to be dealt with decisively through our coming together in unity. I think I can stop there. Thank you, and I give the microphone back to the co-host uh, for further moderation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Comrade Awadi. Due to time, we shall go straight to Comrade the African Revolution to give in his submission.
Revolutionary greetings, my comrades from Uganda. It's great to see you all here, and from what I've just heard from what the comrades have talked about, I mean, you guys are breathing fire. For those who don't know me, my name is Generali. I've met Awadi, I think, so, and Tamali. We've met, I think, in Arusha. Julius Okoth. Also, I've heard a lot about you. But when I reflect about the 18th November shootings, I remember vividly that time in Kenya, we gave comrades in Uganda a bit of solidarity, though it was online. But something that happened there, it still remains to be told. Uh, I'll say that activists are facing a lot of challenges, and it is time we must rethink of how we want to do our organizing, because now if the state has actually it has come to a point that the state has known how we are doing this organizing, and we also have those people who are crucifying us in this struggle. So it is also important to identify who are the Judas amongst us, because if we don't identify them, then I think we won't have a successful organizing. I think it would also be important if we would have comrades from Uganda coming to Kenya. At least we can do some reflections, and maybe just to have a look at how do we move forward from here, because now when we saw what the police did during the campaigns in Uganda, and now because activists in Uganda were really on the front line. We could see a lot of tweets coming from Uganda, and you guys really documented a lot. And for us, we couldn't do much. We couldn't really do much. But for me, I think I'll be brief on this one. What I'm just praying for is that if we would organize a few comrades from Uganda, we come to Kenya, we have a sit-in. I think I engage more physically, so that yeah, we can just have a way forward. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Generali. Comrade, have always given us to Ugandans. However, it's interesting, you talked about the online solidarity, and Comrade Julius talked about how the regime, how the dictatorial regimes use those tools I talked about. I re-echoed from Comrade Julius. He actually recommended a book, Gene Sharp's backfire model, and also Martin's backfire model, almost the same. And when Comrade talked about the online solidarity, yeah, it created an impact, but when you realize the impact, it was not so visible. Many didn't see it, and this clearly tells us how the media has been washed in Uganda. That however much we use our social media platforms to tell stories or to expose those injustices, the regime comes and washes everything. It creates a narrative. Those are the tools Comrade Julius was talking about. And I will go straight, I will summarize with that. I go straight to questions. And Comrade Julius talked about the ways that the regime has tried so much to reduce outrage or to reduce people's anger, even when they are in masses. And the regime has covered so much with that, as highlighted by Hawadi on different years, those same injustices happening, very many people dying, but the state has been able to control us not to act against them. And I would like to ask Comrade Julius, what do you say about that thing that stops such campaigns from creating an impact? What makes it that people, after some time, they keep quiet, they make it normal? For me, I feel those deaths, the dying of people, it shouldn't be a normal thing. We've seen recently one of the Iranian women was killed. But very many, it created outrage, and actually it's backfiring to the regime. Very many women have come out to speak, they have gone to the streets using non-violence. Equally, that's what we use in Uganda, non-violence. What is stopping these campaigns from being successful or from backfiring? Comrade Julius, I don't know whether you're able to hear me.
Yeah, thank you. I can hear you now, but I'm losing. I've lost some words from you. I didn't get some few words. But from what people have discussed, it's very clear. It's very clear that that this powerful perpetrator can use wide range of techniques that reduce the outrage. For example, I've identified when Tamali was doing her presentation, I realized that she talked about the cover up beatings, during the 8th of November shootings. So those are the things. So the most important thing that we need to ask ourselves after describing what has happened, we cannot be saying this is what happened. So what are we supposed to do as activists or other organizers? What are we supposed to do? Because, for example, uh, today's topic is about devaluation, devaluation, the framing. So, and I've realized that during our talks here today, so many issues came up, and those are the issues that Brian Martin has identified. For example, the cover up. We've talked about cover up of beatings. What the regime is using, like hidden assaults, censorship, censorship below media radar. So, what do we do as activists? When there's police beat up or peaceful protests at a rally, or during campaigns, what do we do? So when there's a cover, what do we do? We expose, that the way Namara has talked about what is happening in Iran currently. Women exposing the beatings that's going on. Eh? There are some witnesses, photos, and statements, people, and the stories, we need to write stories. What's happening. We need to write stories. We don't need only to depend on the traditional media. We have to use online. And I think in future we shall talk about spectrum of allies, so that we need to have some allies in this struggle, because when our issues are not going out, it means that we don't also have allies within us. We don't have allies within our struggles. That's the reason why some issues cannot go out. We don't have allies in the media, international media. Those are the reason why some issues cannot go out. Another thing that's important is about during the 8th of November shootings is about the devaluation, because I heard some few things about that shootings. And here in Kenya, people are talking about that maybe Museveni is because you see, yeah, because you have control over media, and he was talking about the terrorists that Bobby Wine is working together with the terrorists. So he was labeling protesters, as rabbi, as terrorists, and also at the same time, they can even rent a crowd to do something that's wrong because Namara has talked about. I talked about the violent flags. So you see, in those crowds, the system or the rogue regime can use the rented crowd to come and do something violence in our struggles. So what do we do as organizers? We need to be also to speak out. There's so many tactics of devaluing when the regime is devaluating our actions. What are we supposed to do? Then another one is about the lying, minimizing the damage, like for example, you're talking about in November 8th, there's some maybe 100 people were killed, and the regime is saying maybe it's 20. So what do we do? So what do we do? We need also to be tactical on this kind of things because the government has tactics, of minimizing the damage. The damage might be very big, the way Hamadi has talked about in 1971 and 1996, 2000, and all those things are being minimized, to look something very small. When people have been killed, say maybe 150 people have been killed, the government will say no, it's not 150. It is just 26 people, and most of them were terrorists. Who have just killed terrorists. What do you do about those things that was about those about the minimize when the government is minimizing and it is lying? So those are the things that we need to look at. Another thing is that, like for example, uh, this November 8th, what have we done? What do we do about it? Like for example, the 8th of November shooting. It must be an international commemoration the way we usually commemorate the Sharpeville massacre. What can we do as activists? Because these are the things that we need to sit down and organize and think about it. How can we make 8th of November shootings to be a commemoration that it can be commemorated every year so that the regime can know that they have been doing something wrong. When the Boers in South Africa, when you remind any Boer or the apartheid regime about the Sharpeville massacre, they don't want to hear about it. And it is a reminder that killing people is not good. So such kind of thing. So I think as organizers, let us make 8th of August a very an international commemoration, so that even here in Kenya, we need to celebrate or need to commemorate this day. It's part of making an outrage. When people are commemorating this 8th of November shootings, it creates an outrage. In Kenya, people are also commemorating it. They usually commemorate the South African Sharpeville massacre. So we need to come up with that kind of thing. Also, that one will create an outrage. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Comrade Julius. And before we come to other speakers, the host will help me give the mics to our speakers. I would like to pose a question again. How can one identify violent flanks? And probably you can also give a highlight on what violent flanks are, and also what agent provocateurs are. Because as per Gene Sharp's backfire model, and other books about non-violence, we've seen demonstrators using non-violence, but then you find the demonstrations or the non-violent actions have turned out to be violent. And we believe there could be catalysts that are using them. Those could be the violent flanks. Could you please highlight on how we can identify those violent flanks and how we can deal with them such that we can maintain our campaigns non-violent? And I believe from that, the security agencies, they will also find no way of causing violence once we maintain the non-violence.
Thank you again. I think that hello, am I audible?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So I think that as a movement, the birds of the same feather always fly together. You know, it's like if Muslims are working together, you identify the way I've been talking about when you're building a movement. There's a character or values that people and environment can be seen with. When Christianity started and when Jesus had left and gone where he came from, when Christianity was starting, people could identify disciples and say those. It is not Christians who say they are Christians. It's people outside who are saying those are Christian. And the name of Christians, I don't know it started which. I don't know the Bible started. It says where it started, but it said those are Christians. How do they identify them? They identify because of their behaviors and their characters. So there is a way people who are environment can be seen the way they're behaving and such kind of things. So these violent flanks or those guys who are being used by the system or oppressors to come and interfere with we can see them. You see, when you're walking maybe in the street, the way they are behaving, the way they are doing their own things, we can see them. You see, and that's the reason why I also encourage that wherever in the protest, we need to have protest marshals, people who are protecting us. And sometimes you realize, although people don't like wearing t-shirts and such kind of things, sometimes when we're wearing t-shirts or a label of certain, it differentiates us and them. So those are the things that we use sometimes having a protest marshals, people who protect. They're like bouncers in the clubs. When you have bouncers are protecting you against intruders, because there are so many intruders. When you are in a struggle, we need to have an upper hand. We need to be ahead of the oppressor. It's like a thief. A thief is always ahead of the police. He knows more than the police. It's not right for a police to know more than the thief, because when the thief knows less, it's very easy for police to arrest a thief. So as organizers or as people when are doing the violent things, we need to be upper hand. We need to study intelligence and we need to see how people are behaving. So we need in our circles we need to have what we call protest marshals. Protest marshals are people who are like bouncers, in a club who are protecting against the intruders. So we need to but the most important thing is the behavior, the way people are behaving. Let us behave like Christians, because people identify you. Those are, it's very easy to identify them. It's very easy to identify this a Muslim. Even by the way of talking, you realize no, this person is a Muslim. This is a Christian. That's the same way, and that things will only come when we are doing movement building and movement organizing. It starts by that time, by dedicating ourselves. What kind of language are we using? It starts with the language. There is a language that it's not a human rights language. And you'll notice that this person, the way he's talking, the person is talking has no human rights values. So there are small things that we need to identify, and they need to be people need to be extra vigilant. People need to be extra vigilant to identify those people. And when you see somebody throwing a stone, this is not one of us. This is not our culture. This is not the way we were brought up to do some things. Like even if you realize that even in that in the November 8th shooting, you realize most of the looting that were being done, it was being done by the people who were brought in by the system or the rogue system. So you'll realize that not all people who are on the street were pro-change. You realize that some were brought there, so that's the reason why the label like that people who were throwing stones in Kampala town were terrorists. Because we here in Kenya were taking what was happening in Uganda, that maybe Bobi Wine and was recruiting terrorists. So just kind of things, government can use. So we need to be extra vigilant and extra careful when we are going out to doing non-violence things, because we need to understand our culture and the values of non-violence. Thank you.
Wow, this is so interesting. We need to clearly define our culture, our values, our principles, our behaviors, our characters that will help us identify such violent flanks. And most of them are sent by the state such that it can inflict violence on the peaceful demonstrators. I also insist that you look out for that book Comrade Julius recommended, The Backfire Model by Jean Sharp and Martin's Backfire Model. And let me go straight to Comrade Mayanja. You talked about warnings. Actually, I remember on one of the pressers, Museveni warned the opposition that he's going to deal with them. And Comrade Mayanja brought it clearly that that was a clear warning to us, and we should have prepared for it. And actually, though that violence would have been successful if at all we had prepared. And you realize most of us, we don't know what to do mostly when such violence happens by the state. We don't know what to do. I would like to pose a question to Comrade Mayanja. What could we have done? Which steps could we have followed to prepare well such that the state violence can backfire to them? How would we organize, or which steps could we take to organize well such that whichever violence they would cause would not would backfire to them, because you realize on the 18th November violence, very many lives were killed, people were silenced. Up to now, no one has got justice because maybe we didn't organize well. Comrade Mayanja, you're welcome to highlight more about that.
Thank you so much, Comrade Namara. I hope you hear me.
Yes, please, Comrade, we can hear you.
I want also to thank all the previous speakers, Comrade Ouma, Comrade Julius, and the comrade from Kenya, the African Revolution. I recalled your voice while in Arusha. Now, why for me November atrocities were stood out differently? It's because we had seen a sequence of this kind of violences. Howard was trying to give us the chronology from 1980, from the elections of 1994. Was it 94, 96? 96. The regime under Museveni has always designed the outfits that are supposed to administer violence to the citizens to scare them into submission. It could have been news in 96, in 201, in 206. It happened again in 2021 in similar amounts and practices like it has been happening previously before, simply because we take on these engagements as events. If I might ask, since 2021, we know that there is another cycle of elections 2026, and I can bet Seven is going to do what he does best. It is going to be violence. I think you have even started hearing reports from Ruero, from Nakaseke, yeah, But what kind of organization framework have we put in place to make sure that 2026 we minimize? So one of the things that we did wrong was, first of all, the actors then, the drivers of the people power movement, refused to listen to those small voices of those people who had tested that before. Do you know what that caused us? We failed to prepare. We failed to pick a provocation and turn it into an opportunity. For me, in my simple opinion, if one person was shot down, we were not supposed to continue on the streets because we knew streets they were deployed and with orders to shoot to kill. Remember, the Secretary General of NRM then, Honorable Rai Kasule Lumumba, had cautioned us that you people, they are going to kill your children. And we took that warning lightly. In my own opinion, what we would have done is that we would pick that one victim and retreat back to our spaces, like at Najana Nkumbi, and we mourn and we play. But remember, they were telling us that they were prohibiting us from gathering as a measure of controlling COVID. But did we have the architectures of our war? If we are using non-violent strategy, we must have generals that must dictate, that must advise us that as far as this circumstance is concerned, this is the right tool, this is the right strategy, this is the right terrain. I'm afraid that when we go out to engage, to try to push back, to fight back, we don't have a command and structure hierarchy amongst the fighters, amongst the people trying to cause change. Everyone becomes a command of his own sort. And such a disorganization is exactly what our oppressors are looking out for. A disorganized group, even if it is big, is very easy to infiltrate. By now, we need to discuss our struggle code of conduct. We've talked about this with Comrade Awad, Comrade Ouma when we were in Arusha, because once we fail to have a code of conduct, it becomes very difficult to sense infiltrators. I remember when we were in Walk to Work 2011, people joined us and we were excited that our numbers were getting big. But we did not interrogate those who were joining us because we were desperate for numbers. So I think going forward, we need to learn to be contented with small but very organized groups. That is why for us in the Jobless Brotherhood, our campaigns were never campaigns of big crowds. We could march in 6 or 8, but trust me, we would get the results. We would hit the targets. We would come back and reflect on what we have done. This business of calling crowds now, look, if you people all know what happened in Arua, you all know what happened in Arua. I am not saying simply because I was in the opposite camp of the FDC, but what happened in Arua, some of us went in Arua when we had forewarning, which leads me to another proposal. Time we create our own intelligence in campaigns. We must be able to sniff behind the enemy's lines and pick out what they are planning for us in order for us to act in advance. So the question of strict organization cannot be overemphasized. There is no shortcut. The problem we have is that we are we are conditioned on a calendar. Last year there was some bit of activities. This year, but when we are approaching, when the electoral commission give us their calendar, now we learn all over the place. We panic. We want to do very many things at a short time. It is not going to work. It is only going to give us more casualties. It is going to give us more victims. I swear, Museveni is not going to change he's not going to change from his weapons that gives him the desired results. If it means killing more people, he will kill more people to keep power. And lamenting about these killings is not going to solve our situation. What we need to do is to agree to organize. We need to agree to organize, and we must set very strict code of conduct. If you have not been subjected to a coaching, a training in non-violence engagement, if you are not convicted of how non-violence actually wins, don't engage in any kind of protest or strikes. Because I have seen people, they talk about non-violent, but they do not conceptualize it. They are not convicted that a mere sea of anti-riot police people begin throwing stones, but they are singing, they are sloganeering non-violent what? Non-violent struggle. So we need to set our own time frames. For me, I would recommend this would be the whole of this year and next year would be years of massive trainings in non-violent engagements, in revolutionary communication, in non-violent mobilization, so that as we approach those natural calendar timings, we have a critical mass of people convicted with non-violent tactics of pushing back. I am sad that I know there are some groups that are doing some training because I'm a coach as well. But I am afraid that the amount of training in comparison with the risk that we are trying to mitigate about is still negligible. It is still focusing around the city center. Yet last time in November, these riots spread out in Lira, they went to Mbale, they went to Marara. The question is now, if the same must happen again, how many trained people do we have in the western part of the country, in the northern part of the country, in the eastern part of the country, in the critical districts like Gulu, Alua, Lira, Mbarara, Kasese, Mbale? These are the questions that we must look out for. But also, we need now to talk to our political actors. We need them. They are critical stakeholders in this struggle, but we need to have a conversation with them so that this time around, when they are leading these engagements, they do not excite people, because excitement leads people it exposes people into risks. This time around, let's tell people the truth, that what is going to win this battle at the end of the day is when we collectively act together without isolating anybody. But before we act together, we must share the same skills that must enable us to counter our opponent. I think I have tried in my limited wisdom and exposure to answer your question. I thank you so much.
Wow, thank you so much, Comrade Mayanja. You've clearly highlighted on what we need to do. And the most interesting bit of it is the grassroots mass nonviolent trainings. this is so crucial, as you've said, and we need actually to. Awadi, Comrade Awadi mentioned about institutions that have failed to bring justice, actually the responsible authorities. And these institutions involve the state agents who are elites who are state agents, elite influencers on media. Actually, these are the people who have been used to control narratives on media. Comrade Howard, how have these elites used those agent provocateurs or the people who incite violence within the non-violent struggles or campaigns? How have these elites used those individuals to create or increase violence?
Thank you, co-host. In fact, it is just like a template
But you
that is
first, Comrade.
formed. Yes.
Yeah, actually, the interesting bit of it, Comrade Mayanja mentioned about is the Secretary General of the party of the NRM, who once warned people that they're going to kill you. She's a live example of those elite state agents who have power to influence.
Yeah. Yeah. These state agents are just they are either uh, drum beaters, drum beaters, or the loudspeakers who read out the voice of the oppressor. They are reputed instances, not only and solid. They are they negotiate a deal outside the code of what? Codes of ethics for how the services have to be rendered as per the given institution. Sometimes they are even promised, a reward in form of, allowances or even promotion, like in the security circles. If you try to throw your eyes around, you'll find that most of those people who benefit for, from the oppressor's promotion are those who show more violence on people who are really trying to push back the oppressor. So it is actually a template that is played out, a template that is owned by the oppressor, that those elites have to exercise their what? Their rented power, not as per the ethics or as the professional conduct, but as per the interests of the oppressor at that time. For example, one vivid, and sometimes I really want to go current when to put everything in proper perspective. We have now the youthful attorney general, the son of the late Jole Joe Kintu. His father in the 60s was one of the pro-independence activists, but now his son is the opposite of himself. Not once, not twice. He has always gone to the you know, international international bodies to represent our country, but you find that he always represents us in favor of the oppressor. Yes, I'm not saying that the oppressor, being a devil, doesn't have his nails that are white. Yes, but in most cases, for example, just recently, he was defending the Uganda Human Rights Commission for not, being independent, on issues of torture. He said something that really showed that the Uganda Human Rights Commission, yes, we all know it's a governmental body, but its mandate is not to be, leaning towards government. Okay, even if it was to lean towards government, but it shouldn't lean towards oppression. The Uganda Human Rights Commission shouldn't be in bed with the oppressor to protect abuses like torture. So you see really how the officers of who serve the oppressor, they always serve in accordance to the wishes of the oppressor, and really how to reverse that uh, is actually by criticizing them and them, try to show how really they are not following the ethics of the offices that they hold, but they are just betrayals. I think I can stop there.
Thank you so much, Comrade Howard. I would like to ask Comrade Tamali. She talked about the failed institutions, including those that have failed to come and condemn the injustices. Comrade Tamari, what other options could we use? We are using the case of the 18th November killings. During that time, those institutions come out. What other options could we use to escalate the issue such that those grassroots can continuously act against such injustices?
Yes, there is actually so much that could be done, but of course, in
Comrade
every
Tamari, can you hear
struggle.
me?
Can you hear me? Yes, I can. Claire, can you hear me? Can somebody hear me?
Yes, you are hearing
Yes, you
you.
are hearing you. Okay. I was just saying that there are several things that could have been done for every struggle. We talk of like different tactics that we could use, and for this specific one
Hello?
of November 18th, for this specific one of November 18th, I think
Comrade Tamali, are you
Comrade
able to
Tamali, are you
hear
able
us?
to hear us? Yes, I am getting you.
Yeah, if
Yeah,
Comrade
if
Tamali
Comrade
is not able
Tamali
to
is not
hear
able
us,
to
I
hear
think
us,
it's
I think
because of
it's
network.
because of network.
As we conclude, I
As
would
we
like
conclude, I
to
would like
pose
to
one
pose
question
one
to
question
Comrade
to Comrade
Julius.
Julius.
During that
During that
incident, there
incident,
was a
there
mob
was
of
a
media
mob of
campaigns
media
made.
campaigns made.
Actually, media was
Actually,
so
media was so
effective
effective
to the extent
to
that it
the
caught
extent
the
that it
attention
caught
of
the attention of
the international
the
community.
international community.
We had different
We had
people who
different
stood in
people who stood in
solidarity,
solidarity,
using media.
using media.
But
But
actually, the oppressor
actually, the
now has
oppressor
focused
now has
on
focused on
controlling and washing the media such that people forget or do not act, or using the media to intimidate and threaten the activists. Comrade Julius, I would like you to highlight to us more about what ground activities or what ground actions can we partake besides the media campaigns? What other ground actions can we partake to pursue justice for the victims?
Thank you very much. You see, activists often believe that injustice automatically creates outrage. For example, if police beat protesters or the government breaks the law, always activists think everyone will see how unfair this is. So it's upon us, somebody has mentioned about Uganda. I don't know, there's a National Commission, Human Rights Commission. We should not depend on those, doing things that we call doing things in a way that is so formal. Sometimes, like for example, as we are about also to celebrate. I don't know which year now it is, celebrating or commemorating the 18th November shootings. We should have an international day. Must be an international day. We need to commemorate it. What do we do about it? Do we light candles or do such kind of things and then attract international media and such kind of things? It's upon us to do something. Like for example, do we have numbers of people who were killed during that 18th November? Do we have their names? So we need to do something about it. Like identifying the names and put it somewhere. And every year when you're commemorating, and we should give it a name the way Sharpeville Massacre has been given a name. It's called Sharpeville Massacre. We can even call it a Kampala Massacre. If all people were killed in Kampala, they can be called a Kampala Massacre. The commemoration can be called a Kampala Massacre, so that each and every year we can even build a monument to remember the people who died, maybe the 150, and their names to be put in that. That one can embarrass the government. It can embarrass the government, and every year when those things are being done, government will not in future dare to do such kind of a thing again. So it's upon us to come with the different tactics of how to create outrage, because by commemorating itself is creating an outrage. Because already because like today, I don't know, today is 11th. It's 11th of today is 18th of December. I don't know with the date of today. So 18th of November, we need to have a commemoration, even if it's done by two people. So within time, that thing can be growing each and every year. Like for example, here in Kenya, we usually commemorate what's called a Wagala massacre. There were some people who were killed during northeastern Kenya. I think it's 1984. There were so many people killed during Moi regime's time. So we usually call it the Wagala massacre. So we need to remind the government about the Wagala massacre. So that reminds the government, so that the government cannot dare to kill other people. That things cannot be repeated. When you remind the government that you have been doing some injustices, it cannot be repeated. So we need to create such kind of things. So this year, let us make a commemoration for the people who are killed, and let's give it a name. If it can be called Kampala Massacre, let it be so. If it can be 18th November Massacre or shootings, let it be so. Let it be a commemoration. People go to Kampala, light candles, and do a certain activity. And that activity will attract media to come and see what people are doing. So the regime will see what is being done, or what is going on, and this will make them not do such kind of a thing again. So I think that's the way forward for us to 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 to, to stop the regime or do an outrage. I'd also like to correct about the book that I recommended. It's not by Gene Sharp. It's by Brian Martin. It's called Backfire Manual: Tactics against Injustice. It's a very nice book. When an activist read about it, how to do backfire. Do it non-violently. It teaches somebody and gives it's a book that inspires. It might look theoretical, but but practically it works out. Creating outrage, and this thing can only work when also as an activist we have studied what's called spectrum of allies. We cannot do a backfire analysis, or this paradox cannot happen. A paradox of backfire cannot happen if we don't have allies. We need to have allies. We cannot do these things out of vacuum. So we need to do also a spectrum of allies. We know who are on our side, so that when we are doing when backfire, like when there's a backfire, we have support from outside countries, from media, from foreign mission. So those are the things who can make who can make that injustices or an outcry to be and to be international. I think that's the only way forward. I think my recommendation for now is to have to make this November 18th, and it's always started with one person. You know, it cannot be started by so many people. It can be started with one person. Let it be called a Kampala massacre, or give it a name, a massacre, so that it can be commemorated each and every year, and to write names of people who were killed in that, because it always touches the government to the nerves when you're writing names of people who were killed in that massacre, and it's very critical. So I think as activists, let us do a documentation of all people, if they were 150 that were killed in that massacre, so that they can be commemorated, so that people can meet in Kampala in a certain park and commemorate and remember people who were killed in 8th of November shootings in Kampala. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Comrade Julius, for the recommendations. Is Comrade Awadi able to speak? He can give his conclusions. But before he gives his conclusions, we can welcome anyone who would like to submit or give a question amongst our audience. If you have a question or a submission, you can ask for a mic and you speak. If he's not there, I think Comrade Julius can give his conclusive remarks as we give the mic to Comrade Awad. Comrade Julius, you can give your conclusive remarks.
My conclusive remarks is that we need to be extra vigilant, and if possible, let us all the time to create outrage. Let us use the 5 R's that is in that book, that is revealing, redeeming, reframing, and redirecting, and resisting. Can be used in reaction to injustice or as a way of preventing it. For example, to help prevent police attacks, be prepared by having witnesses and cameras ready, dressing and behaving in an image enhancing fashion. That is it, so that agent provocateurs cannot come into our actions. Also, um, you know, many activists think mainly about what they are going to do, such as hold a rally or start a campaign. See, this backfire model attention to what opponents will do, in particular, the tactics powerful opponents will use to reduce outrage over injustice. So, lastly, what I'll say is that let us use our social media, because we have got so many platforms using to create outrage. We have got these social media platforms, that kind of things. We should not depend on traditional media, mainstream media for creating outrage. Let us create outrage and come up with so many tactics. You can use tactics that is in the book with the beautiful troubles have so many kind of tactics that you can use to create. There are so many kind of using so many ways of creating outrage, and so let us be extra vigilant, and if possible, let us make November 18th shootings as a commemoration, and it should be done every year. And this one regime, you see, it will make a regime to fear what's going on in the country and in future, and it will never happen again, because once you remind them this was done like this and this is like that, they will not do it again. It will be the last one, and we don't want it to happen again. Let November 8th shootings that will happen to be the last one, and it can only be done by always having commemoration and reminding the regime the names of people who were killed, and if possible, let us even create music of remembering the people who died in November 8th shootings. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank our speakers for sharing great knowledge about the topic, and we've seriously picked out a lot we shall put into practice, and I hope we shall continuously engage in the upcoming topics. You can as well follow our YouTube channel. It has other educative series about civil resistance, and also always follow our Twitter spaces. More programs coming up. Keep following us, and I also thank the audience for listening and learning from our speakers. Thank you so much. I would like to conclude the space. Have a good night.